Or, as Chris would say in the encounter thing, close these eyes, open these eyes, and come. Come and find rest. What did he promise in the other scripture? Let me back up. There it is. To take hold of life. So I don't want to try to make too much just of the play on words thing, but there are so many ways that life feels like it's out of your hands. It's out of control. It may feel like it's just steamrolling you. You may have some negative thing going on in your life medically or a loss or finance or whatever the case. Anyway, life can be elusive and it can be scary. Jesus has life for us. And honestly, he's the only one with the kind of life we need to last forever. He's the only one. So this is why I think this is so critical. Here's another one. This is in John 7:37-39. Now on the feast final day, it's a great day, Jesus stood up and called out loudly, saying, if anyone is thirsty. So if you need life, if you're tired, you're weary, and you're burdened from trying to work your way out of the complications, or if you're thirsty, and I'm sure that applies to regular thirst, but it also applies to, I really want to know you. I really want to know you. If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and let him drink. I heard my favorite line as a commentary on this particular verse was by Winnie and what's the piano, George? Yeah, Georgian Banoff. He says, folks, he said, come and drink. Don't come and think. If you're thirsty, come and drink. Maybe if you're confused, you might want to come and think, but let that go too. But if you're thirsty, if you need something to come into you, come and drink. And then he says, whoever has faith in me, just as the scripture has said, out of his inner parts, stream of living water will flow. This is another one of the fruit of coming to Jesus. Do you see why I'm saying this is much more practical and much more universally applicable in our daytime life, in our nighttime life, and living out the life and destiny that we have. It's not just about coming to Jesus and being born again or saved. And again, I'm not against that, but too many people lose the invitation to life. They lose the invitation to the flow of the Spirit in their life. And they lose the invitation to rest and security and peace because they don't realize that you have this invitation now. And it's open because of his accommodating heart in 10 minutes from now, 20 minutes from now, 10 days from now, 20 days from now. That's why I think the habit of these gifts, the habit of contemplation, and the habit of just simply believing for an encounter, closing your eyes and going, Lord, open up my spiritual eyes, and I offer you my imagination that has been cleaned by the words you've spoken to me. And you know what? If you're not comfortable with that, just take like 5-10 minutes and read something out of the Gospels. And then say, okay, Lord, so your word has just passed through my head and my heart, and you say, I'm clean because of that word. So I'm going to take the risk that you're telling me the truth and that you're going to straighten me out if I'm wrong. And I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to say, Jesus, I'm come. I come. Will you receive? Will you open up to me? Now, there is a little thing here that I want to talk about because I had a couple of questions about some stuff. All right, so again, David Bailey Hart. I went back and I looked at the Greek as best I could, and the way Dr. Hart wrote this little highlighted section down here, is about as accurate as you could write it in the Greek. Okay? Now, it'll sound weird to you because most of you read out of King James or New American Standard or something, and there's all kinds of filler words in there because this sounds so weird and wrong. All right? But here's what it says. Now, he said this in regard to the Spirit, whom those who had faith in him were about to receive, for as yet there was no Spirit, because Jesus had not been glorified. So let me ask you a question. Was there no Spirit at this time when Jesus was doing what he was doing at the temple preaching? No, of course there was. Of course there was. Remember, Luke said that he observed that the Spirit descended on Jesus and remained on him. And at Jesus' baptism, the Father said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." And the Spirit descended in the form of a dove and remained on him. And the Spirit led Jesus out into the wilderness shortly thereafter. And Jesus said, well, the point is, we would miss the purpose of these words and this revelation if we got our arms folded like this and go, well, that can't be the Scripture because it says there was no Spirit. All right. And so that's a segue into what are our expectations as we contemplate? What are our expectations as we encounter God? All right. How many of you were here last week when Chris did the encounter? Okay? All right. So if you'll remember, the very, very first thing that he did is he said, okay, I want you to look around the room, and then he said, I want you to close these eyes and open these eyes and get yourself kind of oriented in the room so you know where you're at. And I happen to be standing over there just in front of the seat that Vicky's sitting in right now. And, of course, I've seen this room a lot. And so I could see it. I could sense the tree behind me, all this kind of stuff. And then he said, if you remember, where is Jesus? And did you notice that people said different things? Some said he's standing next to me. Some said he's standing behind me. He was standing next to me. So let me ask you the question. In an encounter like that, especially when there's more than one person having it, like in that room, where was Jesus? He was actually in front of Richard, and all the rest of us were deceived. No. Because why? We're responding with this thing. We're responding to the call of Jesus to come to me. Now, do you think Jesus has the place to be here for me and here for you in the same way? In other words, he's not limited to just answering by, oh, I'm going to have to stand on the platform so everybody can see me from the same angle. All right, the next thing that Chris said was he says, what's he wearing? And I can pick on Tim a little bit because he's not here tonight. He and Meg are taking care of the Mountaintop Marriage Retreat out at El Tesoro because their leaders are off with family. But at least I don't see him up there. Okay, but anyway, Tim saw Jesus with a white robe and a gold sash. And because I spend a lot of time going up with Tim and encountering Jesus, I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, or maybe 19 and a half times out of 20, Jesus appears to Tim in a white robe and a gold sash. Now, I don't know if you guys remember what I said. I said, he's in a green tunic. Now, was Jesus in a green tunic? Or was Jesus in a white robe with a gold sash? Or whatever any of you guys saw him as? I think the answer can be yes. And now, that brings up a question. We will miss the reality of what the encounter is for if we judge it by the wrong standard of reality, the wrong standard of accuracy. And this is something I really want to try to help us understand, because I think thinking you might be wrong about what Jesus is what you're seeing or what he's saying can really keep you from believing that you can come to him and that he'll receive you. So like the very first time that I ever had this kind of an encounter, a deliberate encounter. It's intentional. But the first time I had an intentional encounter, it was back at Bethel. And Judy Franklin was doing a class for the pastor's retreat that I was at. And some of you were there. And that was a long time ago. And she said, just close your eyes and then ask Jesus if he would receive you. And there was some instrumental music playing over the sound system. I was sitting on steps. And I was willing to do it. I'd never had that kind of a experience before. This was about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And I closed my eyes, and this sort of scene materialized in front of me. And there was a pathway across like a pond, and it was like a gravel pathway. It had a little bit of grass on the sides, and there was a pond that this bisected, and it was on either side. And I saw someone standing at the other end of the pathway in the beginnings or entry of this garden with his arms out, but I couldn't see who he was. Couldn't see any details about his face. And so, she just said, if you see Jesus beckoning you to come, then just walk over. And so I did. And I didn't get up to leave. I did this in my heart. And in my now clean, sanctified imagination, I didn't know what that was at the time. So as I got closer, all of a sudden Jesus came into focus, and he looked like Jesus, whatever that looks like. But he looked like Jesus to me, and he had a big smile on his face. And I got close, and he embraced me, and he said, let's sit down. And we got in this garden, had this amazing conversation, and that was my very first encounter. Now, I don't know what other people in the room, because there was like 500 of them in there. I don't know what they saw, and I don't know how Jesus met them. But there's a lot of people that sleep in the same time zone every night. And some of those people Jesus visits in their dreams. And he's probably visited most of you at one point in a dream. And just because the person in the apartment next to you had an encounter with Jesus that wasn't the same as yours doesn't mean, because it's not a matter, it's Jesus and you. He's saying to you, Bev, come to me. And he's saying to you, Janet, come to me. And we can do that. We can do that. Because, and this is super important, okay? These encounters, this invitation to encounter Jesus is not to make doctrine. It is to instill and nurture relationship. Instill and nurture relationship. It's to take the love of the Father and make it real to you. And Jesus meets lots of people in lots of ways. One of the, okay, I'll just say this, and this may cause you some trouble, but one of the precious things about how God accommodates us. Well, I'll do a little background to the story. So Richard and I, and Doug was with us at the time too, we were up at a church in Denver at a conference, and a guy named Paul Young, if you've heard of Paul Young, wrote the book The Shack. Paul was starting to teach, and he just flabbergasted us. I mean, I don't think any of us really had heard Paul speak or knew what he was doing, and it was super stunning. But he was talking about the accommodating that God does to come to us. Now think about this. The idea of God accommodating so that we can understand him or see him or encounter him sounds weird. It sounds like, we're the center and he has to adapt. But no, think of it the other way. He's infinite. And we look through tiny little holes. And so he's got to show us a tiny part of something for us to be able to see it at all. Otherwise, it would be just like laying on your back out under a dark sky and gazing off into the universe. So, Paul used the illustration of Abram. And in Abram's culture, the way you related to God and God related to you was through sacrifice. And so, at the really critical moments in Abram's life, in faith, he heard God say, I want you to sacrifice your son, your only son, Isaac. And he did. And you can tell that it was a cultural thing that everybody understood, because his son is like not an infant. He was big enough to carry the wood on his back to go up there, and he didn't even resist. So this was the culture. Now later, through the prophets, God says, I never desired sacrifice. And you could tell that he didn't want that sacrifice because he stopped it, you remember? There was a lamb in the thicket. What God was doing is he was trying to tell Abraham, you think that I, God, am the one that wants you to sacrifice to me, but I am actually the one that's going to provide the sacrifice for you. That's where that revelation came into this world and into the pagan thought about God. All right, so now I don't know how momentous my encounter or your encounter or the fact that I saw Jesus in a green tunic and Tim sees him in a white robe with a red sash. I mean, I have some ideas why that is such an edifying image and an encounter for Tim because of his background in church and Catholic church and all that kind of stuff. I felt like Jesus showed me himself in a green tunic because I had been preoccupied with this thing in John where Jesus, she said she thought he was the gardener. And I really felt like when I was asking, why a green tunic? Because it wasn't even like anything special looking, you know? Not like a nice green vest over a white robe. It was just like a green tunic. He says, oh, this is what I look like as the gardener. That's why she didn't recognize me. Now, is that a doctrine? Do I want you to believe that as a doctrine? No, I don't care what you believe. I shouldn't even probably said it because it was for me. It touched my heart. It let me know that Jesus knows what I'm seeing and feeling and trying to understand and convey about how much he loves us and how much he loved Mary and all this kind of stuff. That's all I'm saying. The same thing goes with the contemplation. Your mind's going to go someplace, and you may end up staring at a bug or something and getting a major revelation out of it. Now, let's not try to make that the next tenet of faith that we have based on the bug, but let's not think that's all revelation is for.